You are the president and owner of Didion Orf, a company that specializes in recycling of scrap metal and also the refurbishing of electronics.
A piece of advice I could offer is have a system, and that will really help you structure your company, and it'll guide you. It'll teach you how to do the interview process. It'll teach you, how to hold your people accountable, how to lead, manage. And as I was trying to grow, and I didn't know how to do it, and it was more trying to find the right people to delegate my duties to. But I was a micromanager. I didn't trust people to do it. It had to be done right. But you got to let people fail, and as long as they learn from it, all right, take another step forward.
Adam, thanks for taking the time.
Thanks for having me, Raj. Appreciate it.
You are the president and owner of Didion Orf, a company that specializes in recycling of scrap metal and also the refurbishing of electronics.
Electronics recycling, refurbishing, yes.
That's a better way of putting it.
There you go.
You're also a member of Vistage, a dedicated husband, father. You are, if I recall correctly, a second generation business owner, correct?
Yes, correct.
I would love to learn how you grew up and maybe some of the values that your parents instilled in you, because from our interactions, I find you to be a very humble person, even given the fact that you own a large company and you've been in business for, I would think, the majority of your life. So if you could give us some background on how you were raised, that'd be great.
Sure. So, I grew up just normal kid. My parents, we were probably middle, lower class income. My dad was an entrepreneur at heart, tried a few different things, always wanted to own a business, but for the most part, he was in construction and, he worked his 7 to 3:30 jobs and ran work for construction companies. But he had a couple back surgeries, so the doctor told him he had to change his profession, and he decided to go to work for my mom's father that owned a cast iron foundry business. And so I grew up. He was working the foundry, ever since I can remember, and he loved farming, loved cattle, so we always had cattle and horses. And on the weekends, I'd always get up early with them. We'd have to go feed. We'd have to check things. If we had to get the vet out for shots, we were rounding cows up. And, I didn't really like it at the time when I was younger, because you have to go out when it was like freezing cold in the middle of the wintertime and break ice. But it really taught me responsibility. I think that's one of the biggest things is whenever you're doing something, you got to understand the responsibilities and how better to learn than, having live animals that you have to take care of. So I learned how to, run equipment, farm, have cattle, all that stuff. As I got a little older, my dad was still in the foundry business, and, he kind of worked his way up in the foundry, and he was running operations, and I'd have to go down on the weekends with him. We'd have to check furnaces, check melts, heats, all that stuff. So I always kind of tagged along with him, because I had two older sisters, and they kind of hung around mom, and I was always with dad. So we're very much alike, same personalities, both entrepreneurship personalities. People say they can't tell our voices apart on the phone. We look the same. So I guess I'm, just a second generation of my dad, But anyway, as I got older, getting into high school, I was kind of a rebel kid. I kind of wanted to do what I wanted to do, and went head to head with my parents quite a bit, because they were wanting me to be just a good, respectful kid. And I always was respectful. I respected everybody, but I like to have a lot of fun, especially when I hit high school, and never knew what I wanted to do. Hated school. I didn't get great grades, but I passed everything. And they always said, if you got a D, you got enough. And I'm like, I never had enough. So, but I guess I started working for a landscape company when I was 15, couldn't drive yet. It was a family friend of ours, and I asked him if I could go to work for him. And he said that he finally accepted me. The first year, he didn't have work. Second year, he kind of planned it. So myself and two of my friends that were my age, we all three got to go to work for this guy. So the guys that worked there in the summertime, we'd work full-time in the summer. Guys would pick us up. We'd go to work, work 9, 10-hour, 12-hour days, whatever it was, to get the job done. They'd bring us home, drop us off after work. Turned 16, got my license, started driving there, started driving the company trucks around. Again, we're operating equipment on job sites. And then I guess in the wintertime when we couldn't do the landscaping or, it wasn't as much work. Actually, let's back up. So when I was in high school, my dad was working for the foundry, but they also had another division called the recycling division. And my mom's last name's a Didion, her maiden name. My dad's the Orf. And so the foundry was called Didion Foundry. The recycling division was Didion Recycling. And in the late 90s, they sent my dad over to the recycling division because it was losing money and they had a feeling that there was stuff going on. And it was my mom's brothers that were running the businesses. So my dad being an ops, they sent him over there. He figured out pretty quickly what was going on. The guy quit before he could get, in any type of trouble. And so my dad was really the guy that was next guy in line to step up to run this place. And a couple of years went by and the family decided they were going to close down the recycling division because it wasn't worth anything. It wasn't making money. And my dad told my mom, he's like, I think we could make something of this. If we could buy this away from your family, like, I think there's really potential here. So they ended up making a deal with the family. In 2001, they closed the deal after a couple of years of negotiation. They bought the recycling division. I graduated high school in 2003. So I was working 2001, in the winters, 2002 in the winters. By 2003, I was working. I had 4 hours. I could skip school and still get credit for going to work. So I was pretty much working 30 hours a week my senior year of high school. After high school, graduated, and I was working full time for the family business. And, it was really good because I never knew exactly what I wanted to do. I really didn't want to go to college and have to keep my head in the books. And my mom and dad always told me, like, you can't work for the business unless you go to school. And so I started going to night classes full time. I was working full time, and I just didn't like it. I mean, I had to do accounting on paper and like try to put ledgers together. And I'm like, I'm going to work and I'm looking at this stuff on software programs and I know how to do that, but I can't do it on paper. And I'm like, come on, guys, like this sucks. So anyway, I only went to college for about a year, took some accounting classes, macroeconomics. And, that was very short lived, but through the journey of growing up, working in the family business, I did a ton of just training courses, whether it was OSHA, it was safety. I would go to Microsoft classes and learn Excel and PowerPoint. And, I did all the college type stuff and I'd get college credits for it, but I didn't do it all at one time. As I needed classes or courses, I'd look them up and I'd go find them and I'd spend a couple days or a week doing these classes. And then I'd go back to work and I could implement it because I had managers there that were doing it. So I'd sit side by side with them. So it was really the best of both worlds. I was learning it on these seminars, but then I was implementing it on an actual business that was functional and running. So I learned how to do that. But when I started at the family business, I mean, I was sweeping floors, and started learning the different commodities. I started learning how they traded materials on the open market, and then how they set the transportation up, and then how to export this material to different countries. And, I really learned the whole business altogether. And, that's kind of what got me to where I am now.
It's kind of shocking to me that your parents, you said, closed on the deal in 2001. For some reason, whenever I hear like of a second generation business owner, for example, I always assume the company's been around for like 40, 50 years. So
Yeah.
I didn't know Didion Orf was like a little over 20 years old as far as like what it is today. And then you mentioned like you were working essentially from day one, taking care of animals and then eventually landscaping and then in the family business while you were going to school. I think that really speaks to your work ethic. And you say you weren't a good student, but it sounds like when you were really interested or you saw the real world application, you fully applied yourself and you were able to take that knowledge and bring it into the company.
Absolutely. I was very driven by money. I knew that I got to figure out something that I like to do because I've never been diagnosed as ADD, but I knew that once I found something I was interested in, I would get engaged and I would jump into it. And once I found this industry, I was intrigued by it and I started learning it. I felt like I was good at it and I gave it all I had, And I think when I was 18, after high school, my dad was having a hard time getting like a supervisor outside. We only had about maybe 10, 12 guys at that time. And, I'd go to work and then I'd have to come home because I still lived at home. And then my dad wanted to talk to me for about 2 hours after work. And I wanted to go hang out with my buddies. But he said, "Hey, do you want to try it out and see if you can run the operational side of it?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, because I'm basically doing it now, but I'm not like, I don't have a title." So the next day he gets everybody together, which these guys, they're in their 40s, 50s and just rough guys. And he pulls everybody in a circle and he's standing there with me and he goes, "Hey guys, I can't get any one of you guys to run operations. So Adam, he said he wanted to do it. So guys, here's your new operations manager." And he looks at me and goes, "I can't make him respect you. You got to earn that." And he turned around and walked away. And I'm standing there like, okay, here we go.
How old were you?
I was 18. And so like the whole going home after work thing got rolled real quick. So I actually bought my first house at 19. I had to separate the personal from the business, and all it was business at that point at home with my dad. So
it's hard to do that, as a 20, 30, 40-year-old. So like, I can't imagine at 18, 19 being all business all the time. It must have been really challenging.
It was, but I didn't know any better. And I started gaining my vision at that point for the business as I was learning it. And it made me excited, but it also wore me out because my brain and my vision goes a lot faster than what reality can really go. And I just couldn't simply do it that quick. It wouldn't happen.
At what point did you start to consider taking over the company? Because since you've taken over, you've grown it 4 times, and you've implemented a lot of changes, which hearing that your father was an operations guy, to me is surprising that you were able to go in and improve it even more. So when did you start to really think like an owner or look at the prospect of taking over?
So he was an operational guy, but as he bought the business, he only had one other guy to really help him with the finance side of it. So as the business was growing naturally, he was getting pulled in the office more, had more meetings, was doing, whether it was healthcare or insurance renewals or, just looking at his financials. He had to price out customers. He had a big customer base. It was not allowing him to be outside. So somebody had to take that role, and that was me that took it. And so as I started getting that, I'd get things lined up. I'd start running in the office and sitting down with him. And, he taught me a lot by doing that. And I guess it got to a point around 2008 or 9. We fired up the second facility. It was around 2002 after we bought the original place down in Rolla, Missouri, which is about, 2 hours south of where we're at. And it's strategically located right between Springfield, Missouri and St. Louis, Missouri. And so it's a good hub right there. We got that one fired up, and it was just always hard to manage because we couldn't find the right people to run it. And so we were constantly having to go down there. And I wasn't down there a whole lot since I was running the ops up in our St. Peter's location, the big yard. But it got to the point where the guy that was running it ran it completely out of cash, like we let it go too far. And so we're sitting down with our CPAs one day, and they're like, guys, what are you going to do with this thing? It's costing you money at this point. And my dad and his general manager are like, we're just going to shut it down. We don't have the effort, or we don't have the energy to go down there and keep this thing going. I'm like, there's so much potential down there. And I'm like, guys, I don't think that's a good idea. I'm like, I think I can get it going again. And they're like, if you want to do it and you want to put the effort in it, you go ahead. We'll give you 6 months. If it's not turned around in 6 months, we're getting rid of it. We're selling it, or we're just closing it. So I basically lived down there, separated myself from my family. I was married, and I think I had my first daughter at that point. And I was down there 4 days a week, staying in hotels, and got it profitable, got the customers back. I mean, it was mismanaged. The guy that was running it he wasn't professional. He treated everybody like junk and thought he was better than everybody. So I just had to change the culture and, gain the trust of the customers back. And I did it fairly quick. And, the thing turned out to be a success. So I'm happy that happened. But, I guess I really started taking it over. In 2012, they elected me president. My dad was starting to lose interest. He was tired of fighting it all the time and having the stress. And he was wanting to sell it. But he's like, I know you want it. I'll keep it if you want to run it and take it over. So I was doing it. And it was killing me because I didn't have the education behind me. I didn't have the right people around me. I was trying to run all the different departments, 2 locations, and try to manage cash flows. And I mean, it was just looking back, like, I don't really know how I did it. I didn't, there's no quit. I didn't quit. I just kept going. And My wife, she's a saint. She really is. She's a structure of her family, and she's the one that kept me, in line and kept me going straight. And it wasn't even, hey, you got to do this. It was, she always just had my back. Like, she knew when I was stressed out, when I came home, she would try to support that. But she's like, you don't have to do this. We don't need it. And I'm like, yeah, but if I can just get through this period, this thing, like, I will not have to do this forever. And we'll be able to reap the benefits. And she didn't really know what my vision was. She couldn't understand it. And I would say probably around 2019 is when my vision came true. My dad, he sold me the stock, bought my sisters out. They were in a trust, a beneficiary of the trust. And ever since then, I was able to, get a VP of sales and business development. I got a COO in there, got safety managers, like all these different guys that I always needed and didn't really know how to structure this. I joined Vistage in 2017, and all the different business owners are like, you need to be doing this, you need to be doing this. And they're the ones that had me start the conversation about the buyouts, So, I mean, it was a super cool journey from about 2017 to 2019. All before that was all learning and just pure grit. And then once I started learning how to run a company after I was doing it for so long and didn't know what I was doing, there is a right way to do it. And I figured out the right way. So it definitely pays off.
The story of how Vistage truly paid off for you to change the way you think, change the way you run your company is really powerful, I think. And I really resonated with a lot of what you were saying of just the pure grit. Early on, I didn't know how to run a company, and it was just endless work and not even thinking of it should be another way. It's just this needs to be done, that needs to be done, and then you go to sleep and then you wake up and boom, 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 same thing over and over and over.
A lot of what I thought was like, okay, I'm making it work right now. We're making money, but with all the equipment and the overhead cost of what running a recycling company cost, I'm like, this thing should be able to make a lot of money. And it was more of, how do I do this? How do I do that? And I could see where I wanted to go, but I didn't know how to do it. So when I got in Vistage, and I had people that had bigger businesses, smaller businesses, people that have failed and restarted, just guiding me like, call this guy, do this. This is a good attorney. This is a good CPA. Here's job descriptions for a CFO versus a COO. And, that was before Chat GPT came along, we're trying to figure stuff out and you got 30 options, which one's right, but yeah, I mean, that's what really helped me gain some traction and go.
That's awesome. And so being a 30-year-old with that much responsibility, I'm sure wasn't easy. Aside from your family, was there anything else you leaned on? Was it just pure grit again? Or just for me personally, I find that sometimes you don't know what you don't know. So the younger you are, the more naive you might be about potential risks. And then you end up taking big risks that pay off. Was there anything like that was kind of working in your favor?
Yeah, I don't think I ever really understood what we actually had, because all of our cash flows were going into receivables and inventory and just operations. And so we never had a bunch of money in the bank. It was constantly moving, but it was investing back in the business, whether it was equipment, whatever it is. And I honestly didn't really know what we had until I hired my COO, and he's only been there for about 4 years now. And he started running, he's a CFO, COO, started running financials and saying, hey, we're healthy. We can borrow this amount. We can do this. And me and my dad kind of looked at each other like, well, hell, man, I didn't know all that hard work must have paid off. We didn't realize we had all this equity and we could do all this. So I'm like, all right, now I can fulfill my vision. And I always thought my vision was going to be the next generation if it was able to go another one. And currently, I'm living my dream right now, doing my vision actively as we speak. And it's scary because it is a lot of risk. It's a lot of debt. But honestly, I'm very heavy in my faith, and I just put it in God's hands. And, God, if it's going to work, that's great. If it's not going to work, I'll go find something else. But it's going to be a hell of a ride. That's all I know.
I love it. That I think is a great perspective to have. And not getting too attached to the outcome, I think helps in a weird way, helps the outcome. when you're not just worried about what can go wrong
And
or
I always was scared of what could go wrong. What if I'm going to lose this? And up until recently, I had to. I mean, it was still an internal struggle that always ate at me. I couldn't sleep. It was always on my mind. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, and I had to come to peace with it. And once you do that, it's you can become more focused and your head's clear. And you just got to understand that you don't know what tomorrow brings. Enjoy it and give it as much as you can while you got it, because who knows what will happen tomorrow.
I love it. That makes a lot of sense. So, talking about Didion Orf today, can you give us just high level what exactly you guys do? And then maybe as you're giving us what you do, you can let us know some of what were more recent implementations that came under your ownership, leadership.
Sure. So what we do, we're classified as recycling. It's kind of similar to a manufacturer's class code. So what we do is we're kind of a middle guy between metal producers and smelters, mills, foundries that actually melt metal down. So what we do is we go and we find these consumers throughout the world that, you might have a copper consumer that consumes certain grades of copper. When I say certain grades, copper has a bunch of different chemistries. So, I mean, it's all about chemistries. We've got these analyzer guns that are very expensive that we put on the material. We pull a trigger and it gives us a chemistry of that metal.
Wow.
So all the different smelters and mills and foundries all want certain grades of material. And so over the years, you learn how to sort out the material. If you got copper pipe, obviously that's not going to be the same as like a brass water valve. You got a brass water valve has a lot of copper in it, roughly 80%, but a copper tube is going to have more like 97 to 99% copper. So, I mean, that's kind of how we look at stuff when we grade and we teach our guys as material comes in. But anyway, so we're open to the general public. We service manufacturers, machine shops, anybody that's, coming up with steel scrap off their production lines, or, one of our accounts builds all the brass water valves that go on like the outside of your house or like for fire hydrants. But we bring that in. We sort it according to what the grade is of metal, whatever the chemistry is. And it sounds a lot more, a lot harder than what it really is. But you can visualize it. And you kind of have an idea of what's what. And then we sell it to smelters, but we have to hedge this stuff. So we sell in full truckload quantities, and you get better prices if you sell multiple trucks at a time. So we deal a lot with brokers, so we might not necessarily have the direct relationship with that smelter, but the brokers that we're dealing with do. And if you're dealing directly with the smelter, their pay terms might be 90 or 120 days to get paid. A load of copper is $160,000, $170,000. So, I mean, the faster you can get paid on that, the better your cash flow is. So if we deal with a broker, they might charge us 2 cents a pound to broker this load in, give us the cash and wait for payment. Then if the material gets there, usually it takes, 3-4 weeks to get overseas to wherever it's going. If there's a claim, they'll go back to the broker, tell the broker will come back to us. If we got to owe money because there was a quality issue or something, we'll either sell another load and then have them deducted off that, or else we'll have to cut a check back to them. And that's good business. Some guys are like, nope, it's fine, we're not doing it. Well, then they just lost that ability to go in there. I mean, it's a give or take. So there's a lot of that goes on in the industry as well. But so anyway, yeah, we basically are a sorter and processor. And so when material comes in and it's contaminated, you got aluminum smelters that just want aluminum. You've got copper smelters that just want copper, steel mills that just want steel. So when you get a product that comes in, for instance, call it an aluminum gutter that comes off a house. That's either going to have a stainless screw in it or it's going to have steel screws in it. So when we go directly to the mill to have a direct mill package, that has to be a bare aluminum. We bale it up. It has to be bare aluminum so they can directly charge it. And so we have to have a process that removes the screws. So basically it goes to a shred line, goes to a magnetic separator. Depending on if it's got screens in it or brass handles, whatever it is, it'll go through an eddy current separator, and it can even go as far as through an optical sorter. So by the time it comes out of all this whole sorting system, we've got pure commodity of each grade, goes in super sacks, gaylords, whatever it is. We put it in inventory rows. Our traders, they're trading in and out. They're buying and selling all day long. So we take positions in the market according to grade. So typically we always have our material sold before we actually sell it. That way we're buying against a hedge. if you're just buying and you don't have a sale, copper market dives down or aluminum market dives down, you're sitting there twiddling your thumbs like, come on back, come on back. So it's a lot safer. If the market's running up, sometimes you can gamble a little bit more and buy and then kind of hit a top market, but you can really lose too. So you got to be careful with it. So I train them to where, hey, let's always be covered. Depending on what markets are doing, we can sit down and talk about it. We might want to, gamble a little bit, but for the most part, cover what we're buying. And so yeah, that's how it works. We just clean metal and make sure it's meeting the quality spec for the mills, and we ship it off in full truckloads. And yeah, that pretty much sums up the metal side of it.
So just on the metal side, before we talk about like refurbishing or anything else, a couple questions, and these may sound silly, but I'm not in your industry. So let me know if this is right. You're buying raw material not raw material, you're buying scraps from either manufacturers, other folks that are producing goods, or just the general public. And then you're bringing that into your facility, you're sorting it, and then if it's, for example, aluminum, you're kind of running it through your machinery so that it can separate the aluminum from like any other metal that may be there. And then you are selling that to who will eventually, I guess, create some sort of raw material another manufacturer can use. Is that right?
Yeah, typically what happens is when we sell the product and it goes and they smelt it down, they're going to remake that material into probably a coil or an ingot, something of like a new production form. And then they've got their customers, whether it's the auto industry or trying to think of another one. I mean, it could be a trailer manufacturer. Anybody that needs this grade, they're going to buy it in like a big coil or ingot form. And then it's going to be transported, whether it's by rail, truck, whatever it is, to their facility. They'll offload it. And then they're going to put it through their systems, whether it's an extruder system, whether it's, they're pouring, smelting the stuff back down and pouring their own molds with, car doors or car hoods, whatever it is. But that's basically what they do. The people we sell to puts it in a coil form, and then they sell to their customers. But a lot of what we do too is we service a lot. We do like demolition companies. If they're tearing down buildings, you're getting a lot of steel out of there. You're getting a lot of insulated wire. There's a ton of trash. We typically try to stay away from the trash side of it. If we got to do a contract where we got to service the trash, we'll do it. But we've got, hundreds of roll-offs and trailers and, van trailers, open top trailers, whatever it is, to set out at these different accounts. If it's a demo job, if a bridge is coming down, they want 6-7 trucks a day getting live loaded. You're just back and forth because they got a crane on site and they got to get the metal out. And, but other guys, just manufacturers, if they've got scrap that they're accumulating, we'll set a box at their facility. And once they get it full, they call us, we switch it out. And then, we bring it in, we grade it. The buyer, which is like our sales, our industry's backwards. We buy our material, we buy from our customers. So like, we're not trying to buy, we're buying a commodity from our customers. And typically people are trying to sell a product. So they're trying to collect money from somebody. We're trying to pay somebody. So it's kind of different. So in our industry, the top dollar, the more we can pay you, typically, the more competitive we are in the market. So yeah, we service a lot of industrial, whether it's demolition, manufacturing. There's people that make circuit boards. We service some of that stuff. That's more van trailer. People that are making transformers and utility panels for houses or industrial. There's a lot of copper that comes out of that stuff. So we might have to take a bunch of little 4x4 bins and put it in their facility, and they put it underneath their machines. Then they bring it out back and dump it into a big roll-off or something. So, every customer is different, and we just set up a recycling program for them, and we can modify on the go depending on what they got going on, and we're constantly working with them to make them as efficient as they can be and maximize the return on their scrap.
The logistics here, when you mention, all those trucks, the roll-offs and all these other things sound very complicated. How are you kind of handling that as a team, as a company, or staying on top of, where you need to send your trucks and roll-offs, things like that?
So if it's a new customer and they're wanting some type of roll-off box or a trailer, it has to go to one of our buyers. The buyer makes contact. The customer will call the facility. They'll say, hey, I need a box or whatever. So then they'll refer it over to one of our buyers. Our buyers take the phone call, get the information from them. They might have to go on site, kind of look at the facility, see what works best. And then make sure it makes sense too. If it's a little cleanup job and they don't have much weight and it's not even going to offset the transportation cost for us to do this, we'll just tell them like, we can do it, but we got to charge you. Otherwise, if you bring it in yourself, take a couple pickup loads or whatever, we'll pay you once you get here. So it always goes to a buyer, but once the buyer gets it set up, then it goes to our transportation department, and basically it's all handled through that. We've got a team of people in there that, they're constantly getting emails or phone calls. We need to switch, we need this. And then they also have to schedule all the stuff that's coming into the yard. They have to schedule to get it back out. So it's a lot of moving parts, but we got software for it. And like I said, we got a team of people. We just built a whole new transportation building with 2 truck scales. It seems to be growing and working out. But yeah, we've got buyers that talk with the business owners, and they create a plan that works. And if there's an issue, or if a truck breaks down at the facility and you get hydraulic oil all over the parking lot, I mean, they worry about their stormwater and environmental issues. And then we got a power washing company that we call that has filtration systems. We get them out there, clean the mess up, make sure it's good. And typically the business owners are pretty happy with it.
This is a lot more complicated than I thought. I don't think about scrap metal often, so
Yeah.
it's fascinating to hear. And this is really as green as you can get. This is the best thing you can do for the planet, right? Like in terms of this type of recycling.
Our saying is doing what's right for better tomorrow. And I mean, you can implement that in, personal, professional, however you want to do it. But ultimately that's what we're trying to do is recycle as much as we can and keep it out of landfills.
Right. Are a lot of your buyers based out of the country? Because you mentioned like potentially going overseas. So are a lot of the buyers not within, or if you can share, are they not typically within the U.S.?
So all of our steel stays domestic.
Okay.
We can export steel, but there's a lot more that goes into that, loading and with all the containers, damaging containers. So there's plenty of mills around the Midwest that we can sell into. So a lot of our aluminum and a lot of our copper goes overseas. I'd say almost 50% of our product goes overseas. And then, we haven't touched on the electronics yet, which I know we're getting to, but most of that's all overseas as well.
So speaking of the electronics, that's like a new division that you started, I think within the last few years, if I'm not mistaken.
About 2012 is when we jumped into it.
Okay. For some reason, I thought it was a pivot you made recently. So you've been at it for a while.
Yes, the industry changed quite a bit too. I believe it was around 2012 we ventured into the electronics industry. And when you look at recycling electronics, it really is a commodity. I mean, if you got a desktop computer, you got a steel housing in it, you got an electronic board, you got a power supply, hard drive, CD floppy drive, but it's all commodity. It's steel, copper. The boards have precious metal in them, gold, silver, platinum. And so we're like, how can we implement the electronics recycling into the metals? Because it was still pretty new out there. A lot of the big recyclers weren't touching it yet because a lot of it has to be inside. It can't be out in the rain because, the boards have lead in them. So, I mean, there's environmental things there. And the big guys that really had the capital to get into it, just like, we're not going to mess with that. Well, we're sitting here as the underdogs and we're like, hey, let's do this. How can we make it work, And so we started dabbling in it a little bit, put a little team together internally, some young guys that, are really interested in it. And we figured that let's do this right if we're going to do it. So we're part of an organization called ISRI. It's Institute of Scrap Recycling Industry. And they had they partnered up with a company called R2 and Rios. And when you go out in industrial applications, typically you hear the ISO 9000, 18,000. Well, basically what Rios is, it's Recycling Industry Operating Standard, and it involves your quality, environmental, health, and safety all together into the scrap metal recycling business. And we got certified in that. And then above that was R2, which is Responsible Electronics Recycling. So with both of these certifications, it costs a lot of money. You got to have third-party auditors come on site each year. But the electronics, the big thing is these third world countries that people are selling into, they have to be, I think they call it OEC countries, like certified to where the U.S. can trade with them. And they don't want little kids out there in river streams, like tearing this stuff apart. I mean, they got to be reputable companies that you're selling to. So that was a big thing on, how do we keep these overseas markets honest too? Like we don't want to be contributing to child endangerment or environmental hazards and all that stuff as much as we can. I mean, sometimes I haven't gone over there, but you can hire firms to go over there and physically put eyes on these things and do an audit. And we haven't had to. All of our downstream vendors that we use, we have to qualify, and you got to get references. And I mean, you get into the financial side of it. There's all kinds of things, but everybody's legit. The auditors come in whenever we're dealing with hard drives, anything with sensitive data. That's a big deal. You can't have data breaches. We got a huge insurance policy on that. And, as it comes in, it's got to get bar scanned in. It's got to go in a locked cage in the side of our facility that's got limited access cameras. I mean, there's all kinds of guidelines we got to follow. But, these big corporations, especially when you get into healthcare and military, like that information cannot get out. And it's detrimental. So, I mean, we have to be serious about it as much as it's hard to really make this all work, especially in a high volume environment. But you got to have systems in place. You got to have the software in place that can track this stuff as you're doing it. Some customers will sell us a mixed load of computer boards. They call them PCB, printed circuit boards. And we've got different grades. So we got to go through and sort all this stuff out. And I guess getting into the way the electronics works. So we work business to business. We run box trucks. We've got crews that can go on site and do office clean outs. So around town, especially in the inner city with the big office buildings, a lot of big corporate companies, they lease the space, and it's easier for them just to walk out of the space versus moving all this stuff out. And so what we can go in and do, we can go in and take care of all the office furniture, get rid of that, all the phone systems, the laptops, the printers, if they've got Chromebooks, cell phones, I mean, any type of electronic that's in there, server cabinets. I mean, we can go in and literally take everything out. We'll bring it back to our facility. We bring it all in our inventory. It's scanned in. Depending on how the agreement's set up, we can do like a profit share agreement with the customer to where, hey, whatever we get out of this value, if we've got good equipment that we can actually tech out, wipe all the sensitive data and find a market for this, we can offer you, say, 10% of the return after we offset our cost of the whole cleanup. And I mean, when you start getting into the newer stuff with these laptops that people are using in the offices, even servers, depending on what's in them, I mean, it's thousands and thousands of dollars. And so people like the fact that they can do a profit sharing thing. And another thing we do on top of that, when you get into really big corporations, when you offer to pay them for something, they are almost so big that they don't even know where to put that money in their budget. So what we offer them, we partner up with the Ronald McDonald House out of St. Louis here. And we say, okay, whatever profits are left after all of our expense with doing these clean outs, we'll bring it in, we'll inventory everything, we'll put a spreadsheet together for you guys and show you whatever proceeds are left, we will give a donation to the Ronald McDonald House in your name. They're like, that's excellent, and so it helps them out, it helps charity out, and it just, doing what's right for a better tomorrow.
I can see where that is such a huge help for any corporation, especially the large ones, because you're making it hassle free for them, right? You're just going in there. They don't have to worry about anything. They literally just vacate.
Sure.
And then 2, either profit share or a donation. And again, they have no part in any of this. Didion Orf is handling everything. That's awesome.
Yep, we're certified and insured to back it. We've got all the processes in place. And we're not even just limited to the St. Louis market. I mean, we're partnered up with firms all throughout the United States to where they call it a white glove service. You go in there and you package all the stuff up. We can still get it back to our facility and do all the inventories and everything, but we can outsource the labor side of it and the freight side of it. And we can, depending on what type of security we need to do with that project, we can actually have another party follow the truck back all the way back to Missouri till it gets to our facility. They can record it. They can do whatever they have to do, but just making sure that whatever information's in that truck is not being breached.
Wow. So again, another complicated operation. And I would love to hear from you just how you went about creating processes within your company, because it's something that I think a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with. I think some of us are wired kind of to not necessarily worry about the details at all times when you're focused on, big picture. So what are some things that really helped you in terms of like putting that structure into both divisions, really?
I'm a metals guy at heart. So, I mean, the structure and the operational side of that just kind of came natural. And I knew what I needed to do. And that was more of getting the guidance and understanding, all right, we do have the money to hire some more people. And I was able to do that, once, going through the interview process, finding the right person, that takes a little bit of time, especially when you're kind of green at interviewing and you don't really know how to yet. But, again, training yourself up and reading books and really learning how to do this stuff and hiring people based on, culture and, what drives them and, are they family people or do they just like to go out and party and like, what are we building here, and really having an understanding for that. So I figured that out, but on the metal side, but on the electronic side, that was a little different to me because it's a lot different personalities. When you get, I'm more extroverted. I'll go out and talk and all that, and I can do sales. And what I've learned is a lot of the guys that are in this technology side of things, they like to sit at their computers. They're extremely smart people. And they're like, all right, get out of my way, leave me alone. And I'm sitting there like, hey, what's going on? You know what? And they're like, I got it, just leave me alone. I'm like, all right. So they don't want to talk to me, okay? And I had to hire people that knew how to do that, because I didn't know how to do it. So I was able to identify, okay, I'm not good at this. I need to find somebody that's good at this. And through the R2 system, when we got certified, they cover so many different levels of they cover everything in the electronics business. And so I didn't even know what some of that stuff was. So I learned along the way. And as we're getting certified, we're continuously learning and learning and learning. And then we're like, all right, we're going to start small. So we'd find like a family friend. Hey, we're going to go in here and try to do this. And then we want your feedback on what we did good, what we did bad. And so then we just started building off that and building and, just no egos, leave the egos at the door. We're learning here. We're humble. We just want to build something great and just enjoy it. It wasn't anything about, everybody was trying to make more money through it, but ultimately the people that were around it were just so excited to build this thing. It was really cool.
So the way you hire on the electronic side, in terms of bringing in the best people that you can leverage and that can benefit the company and really take that division and run with it without you necessarily having to get in the weeds and develop the processes. Is that your overall thinking about building your team and then future growth as well?
Yeah, I mean, you got to have the right people in there, and I'm doing my best, and I'm trying to find people that I feel would fit those positions. And you don't get it right every time. I mean, it's hard to, but you try to at least, you try to at least get about 90% accurate. And it might take multiple, interviews to really get to know somebody. But yeah, I mean, it's finding the right people that have networks. They really do care. They want to be there. They understand the technology side of the business. They're looking to personally grow. I mean, that's a big part of it. And then once you kind of hit a couple of those key points to the interviews and you can answer those questions and understand the person, then you get them into the organization once they get going and you start sharing the vision and where you're wanting to go. And 99% of the time they just get excited and they're just like, this is so cool. Like, this is what I wanted. I want to be part of an organization that's growing and has a vision and has it spelled out. Like, this is awesome. So that's rewarding for me. I love seeing that.
And you mentioned growth there. So is that when you think about or the concept of 10x versus 2x thinking, is that strictly related to growth or what is that concept about?
So at the 10x and 2 or 10x versus 2x, I was 2x early on. And as I was trying to grow and I didn't know how to do it. And it was more trying to find the right people to delegate my duties to. But I was a micromanager. I didn't trust people to do it. It had to be done right. And I had to learn how to, let people fail to learn, and it's hard, especially when it messes up with a customer. But, that's the way I learn, you got to let people fail. And as long as they learn from it, let's take another step forward. And so over the years, I just slowly would get a little bit more off my plate, a little bit more off my plate. And every time I'd start getting really jammed up and everything, I'd take a step back. All right, what am I doing? What can I let go of here? Do I need to hire somebody? Do we have enough people here that I can distribute this out? I started getting pretty good at delegating. And, You still got to oversee it and you got to be involved in it. But if you got the right people and you're delegating it out and things are getting done accurately and they're starting to do the building and the process, and you're not like in there doing that, that's when you got a good team, because that can really allow, me personally, it can allow the leader to keep his eyes on the next thing and keep feeding the beast. As these people are building, you're already bringing in the next thing, but you got to balance it to where you don't grow too fast. And, when I say grow too fast, it can be financial, but it could also be the capacity of your people that are in your organization. If you start out growing them real quick, you could be in trouble pretty quick. So you got to be careful.
That makes a lot of sense. And when you freed up, is that what kind of gave you the ability to start building the capacity of your facilities to where you can handle more than you're currently handling, because you were thinking about the future and maybe where your company's headed?
Yeah, it gave me time to think, and it was, as I was delegating, we were still staying profitable, and I always thought I had to be in there and really just drive this thing. And the sales manager, she's driving revenues and we're making money on deals, and my COO's got the operations going. And I'm like, I'm hiring these people that want to go, that are, entrepreneurial spirited, that if I don't keep giving them something, I could lose these people. So like, I got to keep up with them too. But whenever I grow, it seems that, I always go super big. It's never anything small. So like, and in this industry, everything's really expensive, and that's kind of what happens. So, you let them get everything under control and you let them get really good at their job. And as they're doing that, they're not getting bored, but they can start taking on more because they're kind of building their team and delegating out as well. Well, then I start working on the next big thing. And then like right now there's a lot of things that I got going on right now that hopefully by the end of this year, I'm going to be pulling all these guys into it. So they're going to have their teams ready to take this on. They're going to be taking this on. And then what's my next what's my next thing? I'll just hang tight for a little bit, let everybody get under control. It might take a couple of years, but hopefully we'll stay profitable and we got the right team. And if we've got the right team, but it's who are we going to need to add in the future? So we'll have to keep an eye on that as well.
That's awesome. I love the long-term vision there. Going back earlier in our conversation, you mentioned keeping an eye on commodity prices. So do you have folks then, I guess, are your salespeople keeping an eye on those, or is it a separate department? How does that typically work?
Yeah, our traders, they're watching it every day. We subscribe to, it's basically like a stock exchange. It shows live trades every second. And, if they just keep watching it, and then they got to track their inventories, but then they might be negotiating deals with trying to get better spreads in the market, and they might be fighting downgrades. Lately, what we've been seeing is we're getting these trucking companies, third-party trucks showing up to pick up copper loads. For like the people that we sell to organize the transportation, they'll say, we'll pay you X amount picked up. All right, cool. They're covering the transportation. Truck comes in, we go to load it, and it's a bogus truck to where they're trying to steal this copper. And we had one load actually leave our facility, and it went in a warehouse down in St. Louis, and we were able to find it. The guy dropped it. We were able to find that trailer before the next truck came and picked it up. And then we just had it happen 2 more times this past week. So, guys are getting pretty smart on trying to get this copper. So we got to watch that.
How'd you find it?
My transportation department started digging in on it, and they actually went down to the warehouse, and I didn't know anything about it until after it was done. I'm like, guys, don't ever do that. Like, you guys got to call the cops. Like, who knows what you're walking into? And they're like, well, I had so-and-so with me. And it's like, nobody's faster than a bullet. There's a lot of bullets down there. So like, let's not do that. But, just having people like that are that dedicated, it's like, man, it just makes me happy. But at the same time, I'm like, you guys, I got to keep you safe. You can't be doing that. So yeah, we got lucky on that one.
One definite challenge or threat is just what you touched on before with the pricing, right? Like, and you guys hedge against that by already having the buyers lined up. Well, you're buying, and then, you're selling to another buyer.
Sure.
So that's probably I would guess, the second biggest, or maybe that's the biggest issue, challenge.
Yeah, you definitely got to keep up with what you're buying. If you're buying too much and you're not selling enough, then you're kind of stuck, hanging out in the wind. You got to make sure you're staying covered. But there's other threats, environmental threats, with this administration. They're always trying to push something through. And, through our certifications, we get notifications if things are popping up. So we're always trying to stay compliant. I mean, in our industry, stormwater is a big one, making sure you're not contaminating, water sources that are rolling by the facility. We struggle with fires. These lithium ion batteries, that we're seeing now. I noticed at Christmas this past year, all the stuff that my kids got, it's not like I'm putting double A's in anything anymore. It's all lithium batteries. They got chargers on them. Like everything's going to that. So we take a lot of that stuff at our facility. The general public, they can come in and drop off any type of electronics as well. And we got to store this stuff. We have to tape all the terminals and put them in steel barrels with lids because somehow these things, they'll just like touch ends together and they'll catch on fire. When they catch on fire, it gets hot quick. And we've had a couple surprises inside the building. So we try to keep those inventories as low as we can and get rid of it. I mean, that's pretty scary.
That is. You mentioned the current administration. So there's a big push for just green energy or just anything green, right? Is there any incentive that's been introduced for recycling or your industry? I just feel like with all the push towards, more sustainable everything, there could potentially be.
I think there is, and I'm not fully aware of it yet. I mean, I actually was talking to my CPA last week, and we're looking at putting a system in that there could be some credits that we could get for this. And I wasn't able to touch base with him this week. I reached out to him and I didn't get a response. I don't know if he's out of the country or what, but yeah, there's definitely stuff that they're pushing us on. One thing that's really hitting us though is the depreciation of write-offs with the heavy equipment. I mean, everything that we buy, it's $1 million, and it's not like you want to, but like the equipment's so big and massive that everything is so expensive. And so when you were getting the 100% write-off, that was awesome. I mean, it was able to help you really grow your business. And now I believe they got to drop it all the way down to 60%. You can only write 60% of it off, and the rest you're paying to the government. So it makes it hard to grow your business and invest in it when you're paying that kind of taxes.
Do you know what the depreciation schedule looks like on that type of equipment? Is it like 5 years, 7 years, something like that?
It all varies. I mean, obviously your land buildings is about 20 years, 18 or something. On the equipment, it's still 1 year. We can write it off within 1 year. And that's mostly like the mobile equipment running around.
Okay.
Getting into some of the stationary equipment, I'm not sure on that yet. But yeah, I reach out to the pros on that stuff.
Again, leveraging other people's knowledge and expertise, right? You've shared a lot with us, and I do appreciate it, as I'm sure listeners and viewers do. We like to end each show with what we call a hole-in-one, which is just like your greatest piece of advice that someone can implement in either their life or business today. Do you have anything else left in the tank?
A piece of advice I could offer is have a system. We use EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System. And that will really help you structure your company, and it'll guide you. It'll teach you how to do the interview process. It'll teach you, how to hold your people accountable, how to lead, manage. It'll teach you how to gauge the culture and how to set the culture in your business. So, yep, EOS, that's a huge tool. Read books on it and keep your head down and just don't worry about everybody else. Keep your head down, stay focused on what you're doing, and just go hard. There's going to be times you want to quit, but the guys that make it are the guys that never, they just never quit. They just kept going. So
thanks for sharing. That's very impactful. We're thinking of implementing EOS, so that may be the kick in the butt we need there. When you said the piece about not quitting, it reminded me of what the speaker yesterday said.
Chuck Reeves.
Yeah, something along the lines of you had a lot of opportunities to quit and you didn't.
Yeah.
And I think your whole story is it really ties into exactly that. You kept pushing and you're still pushing.
Sure.
Is there anything else that you'd like to mention? And if not, how can people learn more about your company?
So if you want to come see us, go online. We're DidionOrfRecycling.com. It'll show you, I think it'll show you the majority of the metals, a lot of the metal. We'll take any metal, but the majority of the metals that we see on a regular basis, you'll find that out. Our eBay store's on there. So the equipment on the electronics that comes in that we can tech out and resell is all on our eBay store. There's a link on our homepage, and obviously phone number, all that good stuff. But any questions, call us up. If you're looking for a second opinion, if you've got scrap and you're looking for a second opinion and would like to hear what we say, give us a shout. ask for a buyer. They'll connect you with the buyer, and then take it from there.
Appreciate it, Adam. Thanks for coming on.
All right. Thanks, Raj. Appreciate it.